so I'm presenting for the not guilty side, and first of all, in the beginning, when she says she just doesn't recognize Louis Payne, she has a point, because Mary Surratt had such bad eyesight that she couldn't even put thread through a needle. So she probably didn't recognize him, and that's just added to the fact that he was wearing the cap, and he was dirty and just nasty. And one of the arguments is that she lives in a boarding house with all these people. She probably knew what was going on. Well, we don't necessarily know how large the boarding house was or how many people were living in the boarding house at the time. Plus, they probably made a point to keep this from her because, first, there were some pictures of Confederate generals hanging in her house, along with the phrase, "Thus tyrants always be tyrants," that Booth shouted when he jumped down, hanging on her wall. But both of them belonged to her son. Now, the pictures that Mary actually owned herself were pictures of Union generals. So I think that Booth kept it from her because he knew that if she would have found out, she would have gone to the authorities. Third, when one of the witnesses said that she had the guns ready for Booth, he was actually bribed into saying that. That's what the specialists think, because he knew what was right, but he did not want to be hanged. So they bribed him by saying, "We're only going to put you into hard labor if you give this." And then John Lloyd, who backed up the first testimony, said that that was true, she had done that, but he was tortured into giving that false testimony. And then when you're talking about the four main people who committed it, Booth was one of them, and she had this, they were completely and totally infatuated with him. But infatuation only goes so far. I think that if she would have known what was going on, along with Anna, they both would have recognized that that was so terrible and potentially dangerous for the country that they would have taken it to a higher level.
Okay, first, now, her...
Wait! Stop it! Okay, go.
Now, you're simply basing her not recognizing Thomas Paine on his physical appearance. Now, as soon as he started talking, you have to assume that she knew who he was. I mean, if you see someone and you don't recognize who they are, and they say, "Hey, I know who you are," you might recognize them. Two, if she supported the Union fully and completely, she would not have allowed her son to hang up these pictures of Confederate generals and the state slogan of Virginia. Okay, and if she was running her boarding house as, someone should, she would have an idea of what's going on. She wouldn't just be like, "Oh, these guys are just kind of meeting here and doing stuff." She might have listened in on a conversation or two and say, "Hey, something's going on here." And then she would have gotten in. But because she was so close to Booth and her son was in on, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm not doing anything." Plus, it's possible she lied while swearing to God that she was telling the truth. So this proves that she can easily lie. And, she may not take her religion very seriously, which she can use as a cover. She can also use her being a woman at this point in history as a, a cover-up. Because like, "Oh, I'm a woman, I can't do this," because, me. Her family supported the South, she was very close to the conspirators. She was, a personal friend of Booth. When they came to arrest her, she, kind of resisted it, because she's like, "I didn't do anything." Her family supported the South. All of her witnesses who said she was innocent, it was all circumstantial, because the slave was like, "Oh, she treated me well." But she still had slaves, which means she supported the cause of slavery, which then means she would have sympathies for the South. And a lot of this says, "Oh, she's a nice person, she gave stuff to Union troops, she comes to church." But, you know, how do we know this isn't just her, you know, just being nice so people don't suspect her, that she was, you know, aiding and abetting the criminals responsible for the assassination of President Lincoln? Plus the trip to Surrattsville. She can't be just like, oh yeah, John wanted me to make sure you have guns ready. Yeah, no, that wouldn't tip anyone off to something being wrong. What else? Her daughter was like half stalkerish towards Booth because she's just like writing his name on pieces of paper and got his picture up everywhere and things. I don't know. To me, it just seems like with all this thing, how can she not know? I mean, she's living with these people, and they're meeting at her boarding house, and she could be feeding them. And she just seems guilty. There's just too much stuff.
Okay, debate it. Start screaming if you need to. Go.
Well, if I might say something, the reverend that testified for her said that he'd known Mrs. Surratt for 13 years. And so unless Mrs. Surratt knew 13 years in advance that she was going to kill President Lincoln, who wasn't even in office yet, she was just being nice for the fun of it. And to counter your point where you said that it's this strange, stalkerish infatuation, have you seen Morgan's notebooks? Morgan's notebook has Justin Bieber on it. Her folders have Justin Bieber.
We don't know
Really?
that for sure.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and you
Justin
didn't know.
Bieber has a lot of
No,
influence.
no,
Like mind control people with
No.
his bowl haircut.
No.
Adding
You
some
think-
sort of alien transmitter.
No. So you think that because you think that Anna was somehow in this plot to kill President Lincoln because
I'm
she
not
liked-
saying she was in the
No,
plot. I'm saying
no.
she could have
But-
been
but if
influenced
she
with
was-
her infatuation
No,
with
if she was
Booth,
close-
which hinged on creepy.
If she was close
I
to
mean,
her
she-
mother, she would have known what was going on. And her mother, who owned a board house, if you own a board house, you're not just, okay, it is not the job of a woman that owns a board house to personally know what everyone is doing at every single minute.
I'm not
if
saying
I
she
owned a
was
board house,
personally
I would know
finding
what
out what to
everyone
do.
was doing in it. I would know that this person works for this company, and that this person right now is dating a person named this. And I would know that those people who might just be meeting to talk about politics or to talk about what's happening right now in the North versus the South, no, I would automatically assume that they're all killers just because they're meeting together. So next time you hang out with Jeremy and Michael and all your other friends,
We're
I'm
gonna
just
talk
going to
with the US
automatically
government.
assume you're going to be plotting to kill the governor or something because you're playing Pokemon.
Yes, Pokemon is a secret plot to overthrow the government.
So what
One.
makes you think that she would know anything
One,
about what's going on?
I never said she knew everything about the boarding house. One, I said, well, maybe carrying out some of her duties to maintain a boarding house, she could have overheard snatches of conversation that could be interpreted as treason.